Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge, a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services focusing on the Port of Anchorage and the major commercial participants in the Cook Inlet region, providing customers with marine services specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's show. On the breakup map for May 10th today, along the Yukon River right through here, mostly open here from Tanana all the way down to Ruby, and then some open water over to, on past Galena on over to Koyukuk there, and then up the Koyukuk River, some open ice there, and then the upper reach there has mostly open into that unknown zone farther to the north. And looking at the satellite imagery here of the western Pacific, Kamchatka Peninsula there, low pressure in the Sea of Okhotsk, and a lot of clouds here over the southeast Bering Sea, mostly cloudy skies all the way out to the west there. This system down here, that's the next storm that'll be bringing an increase in the wind and rain to the western Aleutians tomorrow afternoon, and then that'll all shift up and bring some gale force winds in across that area, across the Aleutians tomorrow night, and that'll slide up into the southern Bering Sea and push over toward the Alaska Peninsula, the frontal boundary, well, on Tuesday. Along the southeast coast, partly to mostly sunny skies down there today. There was a few more clouds down here to the south. All the showers appear to be mostly east of the border there over in Canada, and some partial clearing along the North Gulf Coast. A weakening low pressure area here east of Kodiak Island. Still a couple of bands of showers keeping it occasionally wet up along the North Gulf Coast. And then this area here to the north, that's what brought all the rain in across the west central interior and up the Koyukuk Valley today, with Ruby picking up about 0.11 of an inch, while Bettles had about 1/4 of an inch. And Tanana picked up 0.8 of an inch of rain, and as that came across the mid-Tanana Valley, the greater Fairbanks area last night as that went by, picked up about 1 to 2/10 of an inch of rain. So some pretty good wetting to soaking rains here up in the interior with that system. Mostly sunny skies here over the southwest all the way down into Bristol Bay. And this is the storm system bringing the gusty winds to the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. Nikolsky northwest, gusts to about 40 miles an hour, while Cold Bay had southeast winds at about the same speed. Pretty gusty winds up the coast as well, with Cape Newenham seeing a gust to about 40 miles an hour this afternoon. Otherwise, 15 to 25 miles an hour on those southeasterly winds. And you can see moisture extending all the way up into the Chukchi Sea from the northern Bering here, but some pretty good rainfall amounts too in this area, with Unalaska picking up about 1/3 of an inch. King Cove and the Alaska Peninsula, they picked up a little over 1/2 inch, and False Pass picked up over 1 inch of rain, about 1.11 inches in the 24-hour period ending at 4 p.m. this afternoon. On the chart, here's that low south of the peninsula there, and the trough extending up across, along and just off the southwest coast. Areas of low clouds and fog up through the Chukchi Sea and around the Arctic coastal area, so not much change up in that area, although there were some showers making their way onto the central north slope through the Brooks Range. And again, that rainy, showery area here in the west central interior. And had showers here along the North Gulf Coast today, southern Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, kind of more isolated to non-existent here over the southeast coast. This system will move eastward tonight, south of Kodiak Island, so that will bring a chance of rain to the east side of the island as that easterly flow advect some moisture in from the Gulf of Alaska there. Just a chance of that happening. A few showers. Another band of showers up along the North Gulf Coast, going to kind of keep it damp and unsettled throughout that area, with just isolated showers over the mountains of south central Alaska. Not too bad in the interior. Northeast areas, some scattered showers of that weak 1,010 millibar low up in that region, and then some leftover showers back here to the west and northwest, maybe a few flurries there in the central Arctic coast, and along with some patchy areas of fog. And then this weakening trough will keep a band of showers going from the Alaska Peninsula right up across Nunivak Island and into St. Lawrence Island. Just some scattered showers, though not much in the way of any steady rainfall. So the rain changing to showers here over the Alaska Peninsula, scattered showers of this weak trough over the central and maybe the eastern Aleutians, but fair back out there to the west. And then for tomorrow, we'll see this storm shifts into the Gulf of Alaska with the front staying off the coast there, the Panhandle, and ways to the south, but still some chances of rain could spread up to about Yakutat and extend over to Prince William Sound tomorrow right along the coastline. Small craft advisory easterly winds associated with that, with the gales in the offshore area here, east of Kodiak Island and definitely west of the southeast coast. Another partly to mostly sunny day, risk of a shower over the north in that area. And up in the interior, the eastern interior, scattered showers with isolated thunderstorms in the afternoon from the Koyukuk Valley on over toward the 40-mile country. And then some isolated showers back along the Alaska Range, but mostly sunny skies here at Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, all the way down across the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim River Valley areas into Bristol Bay. But the deltas, a few more clouds again. This band keeping some showers right along the coastline, back up towards St. Lawrence Island. Then the areas of low clouds and fog from the Bering Strait up across the Chukchi Sea and along the Arctic coast. But higher pressure, light winds, but a lot of low clouds and fog out here over the Bering Sea. Still some isolated showers over the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. And then there's the next storm spreading an increase in the wind and rain into the western Aleutians tomorrow afternoon. And then that'll push pretty good jog to the north here, the front all the way up to just south of the Pribilof Islands Tuesday afternoon, extending back along the Alaska Peninsula. And look for gale force northeasterly winds on the back side of that low center, but more showery and lighter winds. Still small craft advisory level winds here south of the front, 25 to 30 knots with scattered showers, but rain tomorrow night for the eastern Aleutians spreads into the Alaska Peninsula and looks pretty wet and windy here for Tuesday, wrapping back around into the Pribilofs. St. Lawrence Island, light and variable winds there under really a lack of storminess more than the presence of high pressure. And then some scattered showers over the interior with isolated thunderstorms again from, well, the central Alaska Range and then up over the northeast. Mostly sunny though here, eastern Tanana Valley down in the Copper River Basin. Mostly sunny skies, south central Alaska, Prince William Sound. Just some isolated afternoon showers over the mountains, and then looks dry over the Panhandle, partly to mostly sunny as this low really weakens and falls to pieces as it begins to shift off to the southeast. Doesn't even have the frontal boundary with it anymore. Temperatures along the southeast coast, we're in the 50s to lower 60s with 53 at Sitka, 60 degrees at the state capital with 62 at Skagway, 53 at Yakutat. Otherwise, Valdez had 52, but cooler 44 at Cordova. 52 also up there at Gulkana in the Copper River Basin, while Northway was at 56, 59 both at Delta and Fairbanks with a 46 there, and more clouds and rain again over toward Tanana, 46 degrees there, but 63 at Fort Yukon, 49 degrees at Bettles with 43 at Anatuvik, and the Arctic coast 30 degrees over there at Dead Horse, while Barrow pushed just up above the frost point this afternoon at 33, same thing at Point Lay. And Cape Lismore right at 30 degrees, but Point Hope there around the bend up to 37, lower 40s here over the northwest and lower to mid 40s along the south coast of the Seward Peninsula. Then we get up to 52 at Unalakleet, while St. Michael had 54 and St. Mary's was at 46 today, and Macoriac 39 degrees. Upper 50s here over the Kuskokwim and Yukon valleys down into the deltas, nice 58 there at Bethel, 36 out at Gamble. And then off to the southwest, upper 30s here for the Pribilofs, mid 40s out over the Aleutians. There was some clearing out there today with those westerly breezes. 43 at Unalaska and 45 at False Pass with 50 degrees at Sand Point, and then 57 both at Dillingham and King Salmon, 48 at Kodiak. Lows for tonight in the 20s there for the Arctic coast and North Slope, otherwise 30s and 40s through the Brooks Range, upper 30s to lower 40s through the central interior, warmest here in the west with more cloud cover. And look for upper 20s to mid 30s here over the southeast interior, with mostly in the mid 30s to lower 40s over south central Alaska. Lows in the lower 40s for the southeast coast. Same thing here over the Aleutians, with the Pribilofs dropping into the mid 30s. And for highs tomorrow, lower 40s there out over the Bering Sea, upper 40s here for the Aleutians, a little cooler out to the west, near 50 along the Alaska Peninsula, lower to mid 50s for Bristol Bay, and upper 50s to lower 60s here from the west central interior right up across the Tanana Valley, with the warmest location looks like it'll be over the upper Yukon Valley there. It's Fort Yukon forecasting 64 for the high tomorrow. 45 to 50 for the Brooks Range, and then upper 20s to mid 30s there for the Arctic coast. And the southeast coast here, temperatures in the upper 50s to lower 60s. Warmest conditions down to the south and out in the Aleutians in the 40s. Flying weather, a lot of IFR working up into the Aleutians tomorrow, especially back here to the west in the afternoon from about Kiska Island there all the way over to Unmak Island, and marginal VFR covering just about all of the Bering Sea, with a little bit of a break here just off the southwest coast, but marginal VFR in along the southwest coast of Bristol Bay, IFR St. Lawrence Island, probably through the Bering Strait as well, on in up to the northwest coast and offshore, with marginal VFR along the Arctic coast, patchy areas of IFR there on the east side, but good VFR from the Brooks Range southward, then marginal VFR here up along the North Gulf Coast, with the IFR all staying to the south and to the west of the Panhandle, even the marginal VFR having a tough time getting up to the coastline toward Port Alexander and Sitka. So looking at the passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR at times tomorrow, same thing for Adigan, occasionally marginal both south and north, with Lake Clark and Merrill, good, VFR, either approach and through the pass. Rainy looks VFR as well. Windy VFR, and both Isabel and Mentasta there along the eastern Brooks Range will be VFR. Open for Tanita. And for Portage, marginal VFR again with the lowest conditions on the eastern entrance. Possible VFR there on the west side. And for Chilkoot and White looks VFR. Freezing level shows 4,000 feet here over southern Alaska. Not much of a gradient over the interior, about 4,000 feet here through the Bering Strait to about 6,000 feet over the extreme eastern areas toward the border there, and not much gradient either over the southeast coast at about 6,000 feet, give or take. Out in the Bering Sea, central Bering here, 2,000 feet, 4,000 to 6,000 feet there right along the Aleutians. And icing will be streaming up into toward the western Aleutians, especially tomorrow afternoon. And then it'll all push up into the southern Bering and eastward across to the eastern Aleutians tomorrow night and into early Tuesday. Otherwise, tomorrow, just some leftover areas of possible rime icing here along the southwest coast. And then this will be mostly mixed icing over the interior, with the biggest batch up there over the upper Yukon Valley. And then with that system out in the Gulf of Alaska, most of the icing staying off the coast, but could graze from about Yakutat into southern Prince William Sound, maybe over toward Resurrection Bay, and that's about it, but it'll stay all to the west of the Panhandle. And looking at the winds aloft, southerlies 50 knots across the southeast coast, otherwise kind of a light wind flow here across the interior. Southerlies at 50 knots with this low over the northwest Bering, and then the stronger jet out here to the southwest, and that's where that system will be rolling on up on that 140 knot jet tomorrow night and into Tuesday, right on into the Bering Sea. And at 9,000 feet, south-southeasterlies 20 knots here, eastern Aleutians up to 25 knots out in the west, and notice it much stronger there off to the south and southwest. High pressure, light winds here over the southwest, over Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. Then those easterly winds, 9,000 feet, 30 knots just off the coast of the Panhandle to 40 knots along the North Gulf Coast. Much lighter though as soon as you get inland, just 0 to 10 knots, and then 10 to 20 knot westerlies through the central interior there, on up to the Arctic coast, and then southerlies at about 25, St. Lawrence Island across the western Seward Peninsula to about Cape Lisburne, but pretty light winds here along the southeast coast. Same thing at 3,000 feet, light winds over the Panhandle, the stronger winds remaining off the coast there, 30 to 35 knots, 25 knots down across Kodiak Island, then up to 50 knots there southwest of the low center, with light variable winds here over southern Alaska, and then westerlies 10 to 15 knots from the central interior all the way up to the Arctic coast, maybe up to 20 knots on the northwest coast, and about 20 knots around this low center there south or west of St. Lawrence Island, and then southeasterly is picking up to 25 knots, but coming up markedly tomorrow evening there in the western and then into the central Aleutians. And turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop into the afternoon here from Amchitka Island out to Chimianat and then moderate chop off the coast here over to just grazing the east side of Kodiak Island, but pretty turbulent free over the Panhandle, much of interior Alaska all the way up to the Arctic coast. Could be some mechanical turbulence around St. Lawrence Island up to the Bering Strait. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Jim Peranto. Flooding is the #1 killer in weather-related deaths in the United States. On average, about 100 deaths occur each year due to flooding. In Alaska, flooding events can occur any time during the year and are a constant threat for people living in flood-prone regions across the state. Today in the studio I have Sam Albanese, who is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the AKwx Forecast Office. He's going to talk to us today about flooding in Alaska and what you can do to prepare for flooding events. Welcome to the studio there, Sam.
Thanks for having me again, Jim.
Good to have you back in. Yes. We're going to talk about flooding today, just general types of flooding. What times during the year in Alaska is there greatest potential for having floods?
Really, there's two key times a year. Of course, everybody knows about the ice jam flooding that we have, and that's in the spring, during the spring breakup, and that's a problem, and we had a pretty significant season last year. And then the other time of year that it's really a problem is when we get into our fall storm season, where we typically have storms that have a lot of moisture with them, a lot of rainfall, and increases the probability of seeing flooding.
In the fall, we also have the extratropical cyclones that come up from Japan.
That's correct.
So is that sort of tied into that fall season of getting more moisture? And
oh, definitely, because you have these storms that are pretty strong. They have a good tropical connection of tropical moisture. A lot of them are connected all the way down to Hawaii, the Pineapple Express as we call it. So you're bringing up a lot of tropical moisture into especially the coastal regions of the state where we have a lot of orographic lift, that type of mountainous precipitation. It enhances the precipitation, focuses it in certain areas, and then you really wind up with some flooding problems.
So what are some of the regions that are most vulnerable to flooding?
Well, again, now the coastal portions of Alaska, they definitely are at risk. And really, when you start thinking about flooding and the danger areas, it's also going to be focused on the population centers, like places around Prince William Sound and the Kenai Peninsula. It's not to say that there isn't a problem. We have some pretty good floods that occur up in the Susitna Valley. Of course, up in the Fairbanks area, you have flooding. Basically, anything south of the Brooks Range where there's a population center and a river or a stream is where you have your biggest threat for the heavy precip type flood events.
And there have been some pretty significant flooding events over the last several years. I think of Valdez and Keystone Canyon, at Seward recently. And these are places that get typically a lot of moisture, a lot of rain.
And the commonality with the flooding events is it wasn't just a lot of precipitation, it was a tremendous amount, extraordinary amount of precipitation even by their standards. Heavy rainfall that occurred over a day or two, and you just wind up with the perfect recipe for some pretty significant flood events.
What types of floods are there?
Well, the one that we've been talking about, we tend to call it an aerial flood, area-wide flood, is the one that we're tending to focus on, but of course you have your ice jam flooding. Flash flooding is another problem that people really need to be concerned about, although in Alaska it's not as big of a problem, but it does happen. The causes of it are a little bit different. Our flash flooding tends to be caused by, say, like a glacial dam release type of flood. And then the other thing that we are concerned about is dam breaks, where we have some of these hydroelectric projects where there's dams, and we worry about that because if there's a failure in the dam, that's a flash flood. And the difference between a flash flood and an aerial flood is basically the cause of the event to the time that it's going to impact you is very short, within the first 6 hours. We can even have floods from volcanic eruptions where there's melt on the glaciers around the volcano, and you get this surge of water coming down the river, like the Drift River, for example.
So what can people do to prepare for floods?
Well, first and foremost, the most important thing is realize whether you're in an area that's prone to flooding. And basically, if you're near a river or a stream, the potential for flooding is there. But understand the historic perspectives. If you know that you're in an area that's had floods, understand where the danger areas are, and then know where you need to be out of the danger zones, what you need to do. Have a plan of action, an emergency action plan, especially when we're in the fall flood season. Have an emergency action kit where you're going to have some supplies that you can grab and immediately get out of harm's way, but still have something to fall back on so that you're not just stranded somewhere.
Where can someone go to find out if they're in a flood-prone region? Is there a place in the community that they can go to?
Probably talk to your local emergency management officials, the local police officials. That would be a good start. The Alaska River Forecast Center here in Anchorage, they have cataloged areas of where there's historic floods and flood threats. So there are resources that you can find, at least from the Weather Service or on the web.
Okay. And there's also this program that you're familiar with, you're involved with, Storm Ready.
Exactly.
That ties into this, right?
Exactly, okay. Yes, it does. Because Storm Ready focuses on the events that are weather-related that cause disasters in communities. And that program really works with the local community to know what the dangers are, what the mitigation is necessary, what mitigation you need to take to be prepared, and knowing where you're going to get your warnings from, how you're going to be alerted to the danger.
And where can people get notifications and warnings about floods?
Well, the Weather Service issues flood warnings. We have it on our web pages. Your local emergency management officials also will be providing you warnings, basically from what we tell them about what's going on. We work very closely with the communities to make sure that people know what's going on.
And what's the best website that you would recommend for the viewers out there to go to?
I would say start with weather.gov, click on the area of interest that you're in, and it'll take you to the forecast office that's responsible for providing the warnings to your community, and that's the easiest way to figure out where to go.
Well, thank you, Sam, for coming in today and talking to us about floods.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us here on Alaska Weather Facts. Until next time.
Sea ice here with the southeast wind starting to move around a little bit here today with open water here all the way along the southwest coast, kind of rounding the bend there, heading in toward Amonic, still a ways away, and then growing area of open water there over over central and eastern Norton Sound. This area of ice, when those stronger winds come in the first of the week, this whole area will begin to shift off to the west and northwest. For the southeast coast tomorrow, southeast winds 20 to 25 knots, more southerly on the south coast and more easterly on the north coast. Inside waters northwest 10 to 15, strongest air Clarence Strait. Southerlies at about 15 for northern Lynn Canal with 3-foot seas. And then the outlook for Tuesday, east winds 15 for the north coast, east winds at about 20 knots here for the north central coast. And the central and south coast, southeasterlies at about 15 with seas running 11 to 12 feet. So small craft advisories due to rough seas all along the coastline. Northwest at 15 over the inside waters to south 15, kind of a variable, light and variable wind condition there over the inside areas. And for the North Gulf Coast tomorrow, east winds 30 knots with gales down in the offshore waters there all the way around, but just 20 knots here on Kodiak Island, northeast 20 for Kamishak Bay, northeast at 10 for northern Cook Inlet, and about 15 knots from the north for the central inlet, northeast 15 or variable to northeast at about 15 for Prince William Sound. And now swing around to light and variable to southwest at 10 for both Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound on Tuesday. Light northwest breezes here for the North Gulf Coast. Westerlies at about 10 knots for the Barren Islands back in toward Kamishak Bay. Southwest 15 for Shelikof Strait, and westerlies at 10 there along the east side of Kodiak Island. And for Bristol Bay, westerlies at 15 tomorrow, southwest 15 on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, southwest at 20. On the Pacific side, northwest here, southwest of Kodiak. And then on Tuesday, west winds here as high pressure ridge moves through the area. Southeast 15 for Bristol Bay, and then big increase in the winds here. Southeasterlies 30 knots across the peninsula with seas 6 to 10 feet. Out in the western Aleutians, light winds from the east tomorrow out in that area. And pretty light southerlies here through the central Aleutians. West of Adak, we've got southeast at about 20. And the Fox Islands, southwesterlies 15 to 20 knots with seas running 5 to 7 feet. And then for Tuesday, looks like the stronger winds will come through the Aleutians tomorrow night. And then with the front up to the north, southerlies here, 30 knots for the central Aleutians. Small craft advisories on those southerly winds all the way over to the Fox Islands, with northeasterly gales here for the far western zone. And for the southwest coast, light southwesterly, southeast 20 there for St. Lawrence Island, southwest 15 for the Pribilofs, and then that picks up to 30 knots on Tuesday. Small craft advisories here for the northern Bering Sea and south of Nunivak Island, southeast at about 20. Up along the Arctic coast, westerlies at 10 on the east side, easterlies at 20 on the west side, and southeast 20 from Wales to Cape Thompson. And then that'll turn southerly here in the west, southwest on the western coast, westerlies on the east side there, 15 to 20 knots. And for tonight again, another band of showers will keep it kind of unsettled and showery here for the North Gulf Coast, especially in toward Prince William Sound. Southern Kenai Peninsula, much like today. A few lingering showers over the northern panhandle possible, otherwise fair for the remainder of the area. Look for some scattered showers up here over the upper Yukon Valley area down to about the White Mountains, and then some isolated showers in the Alaska Range. Fair in the west, weakening trough keeps a chance of showers tomorrow here along the southwest coast, and a chance of rain. Again, those small craft warnings here for the North Gulf Coast. There, Yakutat over to about Prince William Sound to probably Whittier has the best chance of rain. Isolated thunderstorms up in the interior. And then that low falls apart and drops to the southeast, while this one out in the Bering pushes a pretty good front up right up to the Alaska Peninsula. Again, small craft advisory winds gusts of 40 miles an hour with rain heavy at times back across the Pribilofs and down into that low center out in the west. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.